Hey guys, what is up? It's your boy Leon. Welcome back to my channel for another video. Are you guys ready to be creeped the heck out? I don't think you are. Today we're diving deep into the unsettling world of childhood terrors. Those spine-chilling stories that linger in the back of our minds. You know, the ones that make you question if you actually dreamt them up, or if they were your reality. Before we dive into these chilling tales, make sure to hit subscribe and comment your own scary experiences below. Let's create a community of spookiness down there. Our first story takes us to a seemingly innocent setting, a playground. But this isn't just any playground. It's one that's been forgotten, swallowed by time and shrouded in an unsettling silence. Imagine, if you will, rusty swings swaying gently in the breeze, they're creaking a mournful symphony in the stillness. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, a scent that speaks of neglect and forgotten memories. We hear from a woman named Sarah, whose childhood was marked by this eerie playground. She describes it as a place of shadows and whispers, where the laughter of children had long since faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah would often visit the playground with her friends after school, drawn to its melancholy allure despite the unease it evoked. They'd swing on the rusty swings, their youthful energy a stark contrast to the playground's desolate atmosphere. But their games were always tinged with a sense of unease, a feeling that they were being watched from the shadows that stretched long and ominous as the sun began to set. Sarah recalls one particular evening when this feeling intensified, twisting into something close to terror. They were playing hide-and-seek, the fading light casting long, distorted shadows that danced menacingly on the cracked asphalt. Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest, peeked out from behind a towering slide, her eyes scanning the deserted playground for any sign of her friends. That's when she saw it, a fleeting glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. A figure, tall and slender, its form obscured by the shadows, seemed to melt into the trees at the edge of the playground. Her breath caught in her throat, and a cold dread washed over her. Was it just her imagination playing tricks on her? The fading light, the unsettling silence of the playground, it all conspired to create an atmosphere ripe for her young mind to conjure up fears. But deep down, a primal instinct whispered that she had seen something real, something that wasn't meant to be seen. The next day, Sarah returned to the playground, determined to prove to herself that it was all just a figment of her imagination. But as she stood at the edge of the playground, a chill ran down her spine. The swings, which she had left swaying the night before, were now perfectly still. And at the base of the old oak tree where she had seen the figure disappear, she noticed something peculiar. A small, intricately carved wooden doll, its painted eyes seeming to stare back at her with an unnerving intensity. Sarah never went back to the forgotten playground. The memory of that eerie figure, the unsettling stillness of the swings, and the haunting gaze of the wooden doll remained etched in her mind, a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. Our next story takes us to a house steeped in whispers, a place where the past refused to stay buried. Imagine a rambling Victorian mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling under the weight of neglect and time. The paint peels from its walls, revealing the rotting wood beneath, and the windows, their glass long since shattered, stare out like the vacant eyes of a skull. This is the setting for our story, relayed by David, who grew up in the shadow of this oppressive house. David's childhood home stood adjacent to the Whispering House, its decaying grandeur a constant presence in his life. He recalls the house as a source of both fascination and fear, its dilapidated exterior hinting at dark secrets within. As a child, David's imagination ran wild, fueled by whispers and rumors that swirled around the house. The house, according to legend, had once belonged to a wealthy family, their lives tragically cut short by a fire. Townsfolk whispered of ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and a lingering sadness that permeated the air. David, drawn by these tales, often found himself near the house, torn between fear and fascination. He would spend hours peering through the grimy windows, trying to glimpse the spirits said to roam its halls. He pressed his ear against the cold walls, hoping to hear the whispers that gave the house its eerie name. But the house revealed nothing but an unsettling silence, amplifying the beating of David's own heart. One hot summer day, unable to resist any longer, David ventured inside. The air was thick with decay, a musty scent clinging to his clothes and skin. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the ceilings like macabre decorations. As David cautiously made his way through the darkened rooms, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. In the parlor, he discovered a dusty old piano, its keys yellowed with age. He gently pressed a key, the sound a discordant clang that echoed through the empty house. Then he heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the shadows at the top of the grand staircase. David froze, his heart pounding as the whisper grew louder, resolving into his name, repeated over and over. Panic surged through David, and he turned to flee, his mind screaming to escape the whispering house. As he ran towards the front door, he tripped, his hand instinctively reaching out to break his fall. His fingers closed around something cold and hard, a doorknob. But this doorknob wasn't attached to a door but to a small, intricately carved wooden doll, its painted eyes staring back at him with an unsettling familiarity. Our final story takes us from the chilling whispers of a haunted house to the terrifying reality of a childhood fear given form. This is a story about the monsters that lurk in the shadows of our childhood bedrooms, the ones that our rational minds tell us are just figments of our imagination, but which our deepest fears insist are all too real. This story comes from a woman named Emily, whose childhood was plagued by a recurring nightmare, a nightmare that seemed to bleed into her waking hours, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. Emily's nightmare always began the same way, with a feeling of unease, a sense of being watched that would send shivers down her spine. As the dream progressed, the feeling would intensify, transforming into an icy dread that seemed to seep into her bones. And then, she would see it. A shadow in the corner of her room, its form indistinct but undeniably menacing. The shadow would writhe and contort, its movements erratic and unsettling. It was as if it were alive, feeding off her fear, growing larger and more menacing with every passing moment. Emily would try to scream, to call out for help, but her voice would catch in her throat, trapped in the suffocating grip of sleep paralysis. She would lie there, frozen in terror, as the shadow would slowly stretch out from its corner, reaching for her with long, slender fingers that seemed to drip with darkness. The nightmare would always end the same way, with Emily jolting awake, her heart pounding in her chest, her body slick with cold sweat. The relief of waking, of escaping the clutches of the nightmare would be short-lived, replaced by the chilling realization that the shadow, while confined to her dreams, had left its mark on her psyche. As Emily grew older, the nightmare continued to haunt her, its grip on her subconscious refusing to loosen. The shadow in the corner became a constant companion, a manifestation of her deepest fears, always lurking just beyond the periphery of her vision. One night, Emily awoke with a start, the remnants of the nightmare still clinging to her like a shroud. But this time, something was different. The feeling of dread, the sense of being watched, it lingered, refusing to be banished to the realm of dreams. She sat up in bed, her eyes scanning the darkened room, her heart pounding in her chest. The streetlights outside cast long, distorted shadows on her bedroom wall, creating shapes that seemed to shift and writhe in the dim light. And then, she saw it. In the corner of her room, partially obscured by the shadows, was the outline of a figure. It was tall and slender, its form indistinct but undeniably present. It was the shadow from her nightmares, but this time it wasn't confined to the realm of dreams. It was real. Terror, primal and consuming, surged through Emily. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. She could only watch in horror as the shadow began to move, gliding silently across the floor towards her bed. It reached her bedside, its shadowy hand extending towards her, its fingers brushing against her cheek with an icy touch that sent shivers down her spine. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, The shadow was gone, vanished into thin air, leaving Emily in the suffocating silence of her bedroom, her mind reeling from what she had just witnessed. Those stories were intense. What do you think? Do you believe them? Let me know. Childhood should be a time of innocence, of wonder. But as we've explored in these tales, it can also be a breeding ground for our deepest fears. A time when the line between reality and nightmare blurs. These stories serve as chilling reminders that some things are best left unexplained, that the shadows of our past can sometimes follow us into the present, and that some nightmares, unfortunately, might be more real than we'd like to believe. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own eerie experiences in the comments below. Stay safe, and remember, some nightmares are real.